Hi, everybody. I've had a couple of questions about listings and a few other things with the listing. And so I want to do a video and I will also put in resources, the paperwork, because I'm going to fill the paperwork out pretty much right now. And then we'll do some other things later on with it. But about listings, I got to apologize right now. Uh, Kathy and I have 7-month-old kittlers. What is a kittler? Well, humans are toddlers. These are kittlers. These are 7-month old kittens. And so if you see something flash in front of the screen, or I say, okay, I got to pause, understand I'll be back. And it's my toddler kittens that are involved with this. So anyway, I've pulled up zip forms. And so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to talk a little bit about the number of different forms and things that I want in in a listing. I will say something right up front though, and that is that there's the affiliate business arrangement that is from Verus. I'm not addressing this here. I will address it later on. But what it comes down to is that if our seller if our seller wants to use a different title company other than the buyer settlement company, if they want a title company to represent them, a lawyer to represent them, then again, this is something that we'll have to put in front of our clients. All right, so here we go. Let me share my screen and share. All right, so the first document that I want to go over is one that I recommend that everybody use no matter what, buyer, seller, landlord, tenant. And it's the useful information about real estate transactions. So it talks about what a realtor is, what services we provide, some legal requirements, talks a little bit about financing, insurance, not worried about FERPTA. Very rarely do we have anything along those lines, master plans, property conditions, and environmental matters. It'll talk about different things, fire retardant plywood, other things along these lines. But the main thing I want to talk to you about is when it talks about types of real estate representation. So what's really neat about this is that it's able to be your lead-in for representation agreements. It's more concerned about tenant representation and buyer representation, where people are like, "Hey, I'm not signing anything." This gives you the ability to do an intro to it. So again, it talks about different things, including buyer's agency, dual representation, designated representation, and then our clients would sign there. So that's the first thing. The next thing is the buyer beware. A residential property disclosure statement required notice for buyer to exercise necessary due diligence. This is the doc that is fairly recent from DPOR, and it's for the buyer. It's saying, hey, basically, buyer beware. There's only certain things that the seller must disclose, and you've got to. So this lays it all out. It's funny, it's strictly for buyers. We're doing listings. I've always found it odd that, first of all, when they did the residential property disclosure, all they had was a link and there was no discussion, no paperwork to go over it. Then when DPOR did come out with the paperwork, they only came out with a buyer. So here, buyer, this is what you have to be worry about and be aware of. Seller, don't worry about it. So I always make sure that the sellers get it too, and then that they'll initial at the bottom of page 4. Doesn't I if you get them to sign, great. If you get them to initial, great. But I want something along those lines. Then obviously the residential property disclosure. Okay, need to sign that. I didn't put lead-based paint in here, but again, if the house is built before 1978, there's a disclosure of lead-based paint. And then there's also a document talking about it. So if those conditions apply, you want to add those. There's also here understanding your rights and requirements under understanding your rights under the Virginia Condominium or Property Owners Association. Again, sellers need to know this. Again, I put it in for the buyers, but sellers need to know this as well, because sellers don't understand what the requirements are and what the buyer's right of cancellation is or anything along these lines. Now, it's our job to discuss this with them. And even though it says buyer, I want the seller to have this aware, because again, it's odd. We're telling the buyer, hey, buyer beware, and this is the stuff you need to worry about. Seller, who cares? I think it's our due diligence. I think it's professionalism to have our seller clients acknowledge both the residential property disclosure information that I just talked about, as well as this condo and property owners association. Yes, it's more for the buyer, but it lets the seller know what's going on with that as well. And then finally, what we really want to talk about, which is the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. So what we're looking at is obviously the date that it's made, who it's buying between. The firm here would obviously be Fathom. Okay. So Fathom Realty. And then the property address. So what I've been getting with buyers more than sellers, but occasionally I get just I won't get the address, and they'll go, well, they don't live there. Well, that's fine. There's a section for where the seller lives, but we want to know the property, and vice versa. So you're going to want to be able to fill in all this, as well as lot description. Now, I get people that do not fill this in. And it's like, well, it's pretty clear because you have the address. Well, no, the address and the legal description are two separate things. So I want the legal description filled in as far as lot, block, etc. What I've been finding is that there's no more in many of the subdivisions, there's no more deed book or page number because of the way the systems are set up. And again, then MLS description. So the main thing with this is level, how many levels? Is there a basement? If there is a basement, is there an entrance? I'm not worried about attic type. We really don't have anything to do with that. And type of exterior. Okay. So this goes into the MLS as far as obviously a very small portion of it. But it's something that the powers that be have said this needs to be in there into our listing agreement. Seller's notice. So I have gotten listing agreements where there's nothing for the seller notice. And I've asked somebody and I said, so do they live at the property? Oh, no. Well, even if they live at the property, how are we going to get a hold of them? How's anybody going to get a hold of them? Well, I'll know where they are. No, this has to have the seller's address, where they're living, even if it's the same place as we're selling. You want that, their phone numbers, and the email. You want this filled in. As far as the broker firm and information, what we're looking at there is obviously whether it's the Warrenton address or the Occoquan address. The work phone number, okay, the work phone number is 703-441-7994. That's the work phone number. And then we're talking about my cell number, which is 703-244-8702. This is the broker. This is not you. This is me. So the email here is going to be my email, mwerlo@fathomrealty.com. That's what I want for the broker. We don't have a fax anymore, so you don't have to worry about that. Term of agreement. In Virginia, if you don't put a term for the agreement, it's 90 days. I will reject anything that doesn't have a term. Now, I'm going to tell you my minimum is 90 days. Okay. If somebody goes, well, I don't want to list for you with 60 days just in case, then they're really not committed to you. I want 90 days. The maximum is 6 months. I don't want something where it's a year. That to me is way too long. All right. Even though the seller and me can terminate the agreement, I still want something in there. So listing period would be, and this is my way to do it, minimum 90 days. So let's do the 90 days. So April 4th to May 4th, that's 30 days, let's say. May 4th to June 4th, that's 60 days. And then June 4th to July 4th. Well, we're not going to do it over the holiday. But so with that, you might want to just extend it. I recommend doing it on a Wednesday or Thursday, terminate on a Wednesday or Thursday. And this is the reason why. So if it's getting close, it gives you that weekend to where if something comes in and the seller's sort of, well, I think I'm going to take it off the market, I might make a change. That weekend gives you the opportunity that if something comes in, now you're able to deal with it as opposed to ending on a Thursday or on a Friday or a Sunday or even a Monday. So I would recommend, really when it comes down to it, let's take a look at this again, a Wednesday. All right. Tuesday at the earliest, but normally on a Wednesday. Listing price, that. Conveyances, again, I get people that keep putting 111. It is understood. It says in here basically that, okay, that if it's not changed, it's 1. Other conveyances as is. So if you're looking at yard tractors and yard deck furniture, etc., that's where it would go in here. And then obviously no, does not convey. As is items, something along the lines of that refrigerator in the garage or in the basement that used to be up in the kitchen, but yeah, we replaced that, so we're going to put it down. That's our spare fridge for Thanksgiving and other holidays. That would be the as is, because you don't want a home inspector to come in and go, well, this is a problem. And now that becomes a point where you're negotiating on a 12-year-old fridge. You don't want that. Obviously, leased items, homeowner's warranty. So if you're going to do a warranty, and I don't think it's a bad idea, especially if it's an older home with some appliances or HVAC systems that are 5, 10, 15 years old, I think it's worthwhile. But I'm of the mind that with this, if you're not going to do it, either put a cost in the NA or warranty to be provided by. Utilities, here we go. Now, make sure you know whether it's a 2-zone or single zone home and put it in here. We all know as buyers, when we look at that, we want to know. And I think it's just professional and the right thing to do. Broker's duties, we've got all that. Buyer agrees that showing instructions to be shared with other real estate licensees and their prospective buyers are as follows. Put something in there that's truthful and factual in what you're going to put in. Don't put, TBD or anything along these lines. Let the seller know what it is, whether it's 1 hour notice or anything along those lines. The next block where it talks about broker will or will not install an electronic lockbox. If you're doing a combo lock, remember that many E&Os, including ours, is not going to cover you if it's a combo box and somebody breaks in. With an electronic, it's a whole different story. Marketing and advertising, seller authorizes or does not authorize multiple listing. Obviously it is. Now where it talks about B, seller authorizes or does not authorize broker marketing properties to also make the listing data available to third-party websites. This is going out to Zillow and to Realtor.com and all the other things, including our sites. Okay. So if it's checked no, they're not going to reflect on our site or any of the others. And that really limits the exposure of the property. Same thing with seller limiting the address. I would definitely put seller authorizes for third party and seller authorizes for the address. And I've always had a problem with unedited comments, but I've never really seen any real unedited comments. So, I would do it, allow it. The other thing is that if you don't put that, especially if you don't put seller authorizes display of automated estimate, it can get kicked out by those third-party sites. Okay. People get concerned. Well, what if it's, if it tells me that my house is listed for 520 and the automated sites say it should be at 505. Well, guess what? Those sites take the information from Bright MLS. So it's usually going to be right on or about that amount. Authorized, does not authorize, list the property under coming soon. Remember, there are rules with that. I'm actually dealing with an agent in my neighborhood who has a sign with a coming soon. And when I called her voicemail basically alludes to heaven and earth and all things important. I've never gotten a call back. When I called the broker and said, hey, it's coming soon, but I don't see it. Well, you'll just have to keep checking the MLS. And I'm working on a cure for that. But if it's coming soon, remember 21 days. My feeling is that if you're going to list it, you can list it on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, coming soon, and then it goes live on Friday, or better yet, Saturday. That's my feeling. but I would not do it for any more than 10 days. 2 weeks at the absolute maximum, because people get bored with singing, people will lose interest. We've got the dual and designated agency. I'll leave that up to you. Compensation. Payment. Seller will pay broker a cash total compensation of, this is the total amount to be split between Fathom Realty and the cooperating brokerage. So if you were to put 6%, a lot of people go nuts, because then when we talk and go down to buyer's agency, you put 3, and sellers will go, what? You mean I'm paying 9%? You've got to explain to them, and do a good job of it, that the first blank is the total. And then this is what you're going to give to the buyer brokerage, okay? For if within 30 days after expiration or termination, I would put 30 days to 60 days. I usually put 30. How are you going to find out if they, you'll be able to find out on a listing, but if they go for sale by owner, you won't know. So anyway, I talked about buyer agency compensation. Other compensation is an N, okay? Note, compensation may be seen by a percentage, definite dollar amount, or N for no compensation. Brokers' compensation, the sharing of compensation between brokers, are not fixed or controlled. They're going to read that, and you can tell them when they ask, hey, it is something that's negotiated. This is what it is. I would recommend that if it comes down to it, you for Fathom, because it's 100, obviously you're keeping 100%, go no lower than 1. I would expect that you would, hopefully for you, go no lower than 2, okay? But if it's anything less than 1, I want you to call me and let's talk about it. Variable rate commission, if you're doing dual agency or designated agency, and what that, for those of you that don't know, variable rate commission says, hey, if the buyer's agent is in the office, then, or the buyer's agent is me, then we'll reduce your compensation, okay? And so, if it comes down to it, if applicable, broker and seller agree, the variable rate compensation to be paid as, and that would be a percentage. It's only applicable if you bring the buyer and you're a dual agent, or if it's a designated agency. But designated agency, I want you to talk to me. I want you to talk to the other agent. Early termination. In the event seller wishes to terminate agreement prior to the end of the listing period without good cause, seller will pay the broker. Look, people put money in there. Frankly, I don't care. I don't care if you put 0 in there. If they don't want to work with you, the chances are you don't want to work with them. You just didn't want to fire them. So you're going to do the dance of joy. So my feeling is I always put not NA, because I'm not gonna take money from them. I mean, it's just not worth it. Disclose other offers, does or does not. I put does. I think there may come a time when we're going to see does not, and we'll talk about that as well later on. Relocation program, you got that. Condominium, you know about all that. But hey, guys, fill this in, okay? And seller represents the seller is or is not current. Don't do this, partially. Fill it all in. The same thing with Property Owners Association, because this has to go into the MLS. So make sure that you get all this done. Property condition, it's probably going to be part of the, still fall under, Residential Property Disclosure Act. So the property is or is not exempt, is probably is not exempt. Lead-based paint, again, depends on whether it was built before 1978 or not. Current liens. Look, again, I get some of these through where none of this is filled in. Okay, fill it in. So if they own it outright, that's great. If not, property is securing the first mortgage or deed of trust loan held by the lender. You give the lender's name, approximate balance, and the type of loan. Okay, property is security for a second mortgage. I'm not really seeing that much, but if it is, you got to put that in, or line of credit. Now, as a heads up, sometimes sellers will have had fences put up or new roofs, and to a degree it gets financed. And they think, well, I'm just getting it financed. The fencing company can possibly put a lien on the property until it's paid. So you want to make sure that if that happens, that's in there. Seller's count on all payments. Okay, that's got to be, if it's true, check it. If not, okay, seller's not in default. All these have to be filled in. Very rarely do I see seller financing. In fact, I think I've only seen it twice in the 26 years I've been doing this. Here's something that's a pet peeve of mine. Many of you do it, many of you don't. My feeling is if we're representing a seller, they should have an idea what their closing costs are going to be and have an seller's estimate of cost at settlement. It's very easy to get the information. I have a spreadsheet. You want it? I'll send it to you. It's a piece of cake. I had it in resources, and then they got rid of the ability to have spreadsheets. So, I can have that available. Seller's duties talks about that. Seller is or is not licensed, has no knowledge or existence of removal or abandonment of any underground storage tanks. If it's out in the wilderness, so to speak, or it's an older house, this is something that you may need to be concerned with. And if they say, well, you can say, well, especially on an older house. So I see you have natural gas. Was it always natural gas? Oh no, we had an oil tank, and now you have an idea that that's something you have to deal with. If it is or is not tenant occupied, and again, this is a big thing. Seller has or does not have a recording system. Okay, if there are cameras, if there are listening devices, if there's a Ring doorbell or Arlo or anything along those lines, that has to be disclosed. So if all they have is the Ring doorbell, seller has a recording system, period, done, end of story. Let's see, other thing to fill out, additional terms. This is something that if you're going to provide the warranty or additional terms that when it comes down to it, they need a closing at a certain time or date, that's what you want to put in there. Broker sales manager is obviously me. And then sales associate, this is all your information. And then supervising broker, this is my information. So again, this is you. Sales associate, this is me. All right. So I'll have this. This is going to also be in hard copy. Well, soft copy. It'll be a file. But I wanted to have this for you so that you could. Let me stop share. So that then you could have this as a way to refer back to on a video as well as on a doc. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.